Welcome to ReThink You, bringing you ideas, inspiration, and motivation to start living the life you were created to live. Here is your host, author, trainer, speaker, and coach, and founder of ReThink You, Kim Lovings.
Well, hi, and welcome back to the ReThink You podcast. It's so good to have you here today, and I'm excited to introduce you to Marcy Meyers. I met Marcy because I read her book, and I have to say that her book, Blessed with Energy, was one of the best reads of 2019, in my opinion, or 2020. It so impressed me, and I reached out to Marcy, and I was very excited that we connected and had a conversation because Marcy is a bioenergetics therapist, and she's in private practice in Kansas. But as I mentioned, she's also an author and a public speaker. Marcy studied psychology as an undergraduate and then went on to do the science of energy medicine as a postgraduate. And Marcy actually had the privilege of studying under three of the forerunners in this field. She brings a unique combination of personal life experiences, academic training, and 20 years of scripture study into her practice, which is what caught my attention because Marcy has a passion and curiosity to understand the bigger picture and a willingness to step outside traditional thinking and love for the foundational truths found in scripture. And she brings 20 years of scripture study into her practice. This approach to life is the perfect platform of discovering how faith and science confirm each other. Marcy is passionate about helping others gain a greater understanding of their unique created potential for vibrant life. Marcy enjoys an abundant life with her husband, 4 children, and 10 grandchildren. What a blessing, 10 blessings of grandchildren. So Marcy, thank you so much for blessing us with your content today. And I know there's a story there. So as you introduce yourself, I'm going to say, why don't you start off by explaining how you got into this field, but more importantly, what is bioenergetics?
Thank you, Kim. Thank you for that very nice introduction and all those supportive words. It makes me feel good to be seen by you. And I truly appreciate this opportunity to talk with your audience. That's a great question. What is bioenergetics? And whenever I tell someone that's the field I'm in, the first question I hear is, what exactly is that? So just a short explanation, bio refers to body. Energetics refers to the electromagnetic frequencies that flow through the body, surround the body, and actually allow us to communicate internally and also with the world outside of us. My particular focus of bioenergetics works in what I call body defense systems. It's the different ways the mind and the body have developed habits, usually unconscious habits and patterns, to help self feel safe or defended from real or perceived threats. So it manifests in ways like muscle tension pattern, breathing pattern, patterns in the nervous system, patterns in the electromagnetic system that we just talked about. And all of those show us areas that the natural balance and flow of the body has slowed down, and it prevents the authentic expression of self in the world.
Wow, that is so good. And I know that some people are saying, well, there's a whole lot to this that I never thought about. So how did you get into the field, Marcy? How did you stumble into doing this? Because often our pivots in life involve a stumble rather than an intentional move. So tell us how you got started.
Well, honestly, stumble is a great reference point. I have 2 siblings who were struggling with physical illnesses, and Western medicine was not able to get down to the cause. So they were being offered pain management, but not a lot of hope, and they weren't doing better, they were getting worse. So I just went on a journey, trying to find what had caused this. My belief is that we're not designed to be in a state of dis-ease or imbalance. So what had pulled them off of balance? What was contributing to the poor health physically as well as emotionally? And I stumbled upon something called energetics, which has to do with the support system around the body. So I actually went to a weekend exposure seminar and discovered that I was very attracted to what they were teaching, but it had more to do with my own health than it had to do with theirs initially. Because what I recognized was that I felt a sense of being disconnected. I felt disconnected from myself. I felt disconnected from others. I felt disconnected from the world around me. And the more disconnected I felt, I did begin noticing, even in my own life, the less healthy I felt physically and emotionally. And one day I just realized, I'm really just surviving. I'm not thriving. And it might look like people from the outside in that I was doing pretty well, but internally I knew I'm really just getting by, and that I'm probably not designed to just survive. So what is it that's interfering with this sense of thriving and connection? And then what could I do about it? How could I bring myself back into a position of feeling like I'm connected and I'm alive and I'm in the moment? And this is what I learned. We're actually designed with an innate ability to rebalance ourselves physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And it all starts with vibrational frequencies. And which sounds like a bold statement until you start to think about the human body is actually designed.
That's fascinating, because I think vibration and energy is just such an important aspect. But, for somebody who's listening to this, who perhaps has never considered anything out of traditional medicine, why should they even care about it? Why is it important for us to even understand this energy field, like hoopla around us? Like, some people would just roll their eyes and say, well, that's a lot of gobbledygook. Why should I care? Why is it important that we understand our energy fields and our vibrational fields, Marcy?
Another great question. So to understand how frequencies actually affect us, we need to understand how we're actually created. We actually need to rethink the design of the human body. So we tend to think of ourselves as solid matter. We are bone and muscle and skin and tissue with some liquid in there, blood and water. But the truth is, if you were to look at yourself under a microscope, magnified about 1,000 times, what you would see on an individual cell is that you're in constant motion. You're literally physically moving and pulsating and emitting pulsations of electrical frequencies. And these frequencies that are constantly being emitted from our cells are actually communicating with all the cells surrounding it. So if you think about the millions of cells that make up the human body, all pulsating and communicating with each other electrically, some researchers have described it as cells actually singing to each other. Then you begin to understand, oh my goodness, we are literally made up of electrical impulses. And then if you begin to recognize that the design of the body, I happen to be a person who believes that there's a master design to our body, that we didn't happen by chance. So if you begin to think of the design of the body and how we take in information, we're given these senses, these magnificent senses. We have eyes, ears, smell, touch, taste, and a sixth sense. Some people call it intuition. All of these take in information from the outside world in wavelength form. And when these wavelengths enter into the body, they get converted into electrical frequencies that travel up and down the nerve paths. And that's how we process information. Not only internally, but we are processing information with the world around us through these frequencies. Another word for frequencies is vibration. So that's why we can start looking at what is vibration and how is it affecting us.
Right. So with the body having vibrations, as I said, this is making sense because I've read your book, and I encourage people to read your book because it just blew my mind, and in many ways has changed my life, as we've spoken about. And understanding these vibrations is a critical part to just overall mindset. So with me being Rethink You, and I help people rethink themselves, it's understanding that mind-body connection, which I know we're going to be unpacking at the summit, and I'll talk about that in due course. But how do vibrations actually affect us? But more importantly, I mean, are some parts of the body vibrating at different vibrations than other parts of the body? You know, how does this all work together, Marcy?
So research, turns out I'm a bit of a science geek. So it's very exciting for me to see all the research tools that we have now, because they can offer us some very solid information. For instance, we now know that if a body is operating at health, every human body, I'll choose a specific organ, say the liver or the kidneys, they have a very specific frequency that they vibrate at in health. That lets us begin to understand when an organ is off of health or in a state of imbalance. So yes, we have very specific frequencies within the body, and there are certain parts of the body that have a stronger frequency, which we'll talk about in a minute. But first, I want to talk a little bit about where these frequencies come from, because they don't start internally. They actually start from external. For example, there are frequencies that are emanated from the earth. It's called the Schumann resonance. It's very specific and very constant wherever you might stand on earth. It's very constant between 7.8 and 8 hertz. These particular frequencies have been proven scientifically to support physical and emotional health. So we are blessed with this abundant, constant supply of frequency that can help rebalance us if we learn to connect into it. The other thing is that we're surrounded by an atmosphere of frequencies. They can be heard as sound and felt by vibration. And interesting enough, as research is reaching out into outer space, we are beginning to hear sounds that are emanating from outer space, very high-pitched, constant sounds that are emanating from outer space and then entering into our atmosphere. So like in the same way that the physical body needs food to metabolize for energy, this electromagnetic field that surrounds and supports us needs constant frequencies. We need to be metabolizing and refreshing those frequencies, and they surround us. They're in the atmosphere around us. So you asked if there are certain areas of the body that have a stronger vibrational frequency. And interesting enough, there is one very specific organ, and it's the heart, that has the strongest vibrational frequency. It generates an energy field that is 60 times greater than the energy field of the brain. So we live in a culture that has learned to live mostly in the mental aspect, but our energy body is 60 times greater in the heart field. And it's been shown that the heart actually interacts with every other cell in the body. It communicates constantly with every other cell in the body, which is quite fascinating when we start thinking about how the body is informed and how it's receiving information. So if you think about the brain, we have on average 30 to 40,000 thoughts a day. That's a lot of thoughts. And most of them are not necessarily conscious thoughts, but they're still impacting the body. So if you look at it from that point of view and you recognize that thoughts and emotions actually have vibrational frequency, which has also been supported by science, you begin to see how our thoughts can affect the body and how the heart is interacting with that. So there are emotions that have higher frequencies and emotions that have lower frequencies. And neuroscience has shown us what we think affects how we feel. So if we're going to talk about emotions, we're always going to be looking at what we're thinking. But to go back to emotions for a minute, emotions like guilt, fear, anger, rage, shame have all been shown to have lower vibrational frequencies. Emotions like joy, love, peace, gratitude, they all resonate at a much higher frequency. So if you look at what thoughts you're generating and how those thoughts are going to be supporting or creating emotions in the body, you can begin to see how you can raise or lower your own vibrational frequency. And when we think about it in terms of the overall picture, if we have the power to raise or lower our own vibrational frequencies, we have the power to also help shift our physical health. We know now that on a cellular level, lower frequencies allow disease to enter the body. For instance, cancer cells are at a very low frequency. Cold, if a person gets the cold virus, those cells are vibrating at a very low frequency. And now if we go back around for just a minute to those 30 to 40,000 thoughts that we have in a day, if we're allowing a loop of negative thoughts, of fear thoughts, to be the large majority of what we're thinking, we are lowering our own vibrational frequency.
So good. I could listen to you for hours, Marcy. As I said, I just loved reading your book. Excuse me, but I did want to say for the audience, the impact of what you just said, the ability for us to take charge of our thoughts and in that process sort of lift the vibrations of the body, from a low frequency to a high frequency. So it's adding another layer of complexity, or just what I call the colors, because so many times we learn things in black and white. And I find when I learn a body of knowledge like yours, it almost sort of adds a depth of dimension and color to some of this understanding of how our brain works and how that impacts our emotions, and also to know that about the heart. I had a quick question, which sounds tangential, but I think it plays into what you said earlier about the megahertz or the frequency of the earth. Speak to me for a moment about the importance of being able to ground ourselves on the earth. And I know some people do that in order to adjust their circadian rhythm after they've traveled to get over jet lag. The sooner you can ground yourself, the better. Speak to me a moment in terms of what we can do to connect ourselves to that earth's energy, because so many of us are not connected directly to the earth. We're in buildings, we're not on earth, we're on other structures. So I'd love to hear that a little bit more about that.
It really goes back to what I said about how I even got into bioenergetics, and it's that sense of feeling disconnected. Research has shown just this past year, well, let's take the pandemic year out of it, but the year prior to that, that 43% of adults in the US feel disconnected. So there's a lot of things that are causing that sense of disconnection. And one is that we are not out in nature like we used to be as an agricultural society. So one of the first things that you can do is go out and walk, just walk. Now, there's a lot of promotion right now about use an earthing mat or use a grounding mat, or you must be barefoot, but actually you don't need any of those things. That frequency is very strong. What you do need to be aware of is how your thought processes may be preventing you from accessing that frequency of earth. And so that's one of the first things I work on with clients, is looking at how safe do you feel in the world? And if the thought processes have to do with, I don't feel safe here, and I'm not sure I even want to be here, then we begin working on bringing with intention some affirmations around, I choose to be here. It's safe to be here now. I open myself. So it's the mind and body working together. When we learn how to use intention, and then we begin learning to use vibrational frequency and intentional thinking, that's when we can start shifting from this feeling of being powerless to this feeling of being actually quite powerful.
Fabulous. I love that. Thank you so much, because that's some of the work I do, of course, as well, in helping people through affirmations and intentional thought shifts to reprogram the brain around those issues and connect. So thank you for that. Wow.
Kim, there's also some other tools that are available. In certain Christian cultures, there are words that cause people to just be afraid. But I'm going to encourage any listeners that are coming at it from a spiritual point of view and in specific Christianity, not to be afraid of a word, but maybe to go gain an understanding of the word first. For example, the word chakra. Chakra just refers to energy vortices in the body, spinning wheels of energy, which is how we're designed. It's God's design for us. So if you were to find a app, say on your phone, that played certain chakra tones, they're specific frequencies, and there's a frequency that can help you connect to the frequency of Earth. It's a vibration. So as you're listening to it, the vibration literally is resonating in your cells, and there's something called harmonic induction, so that as you begin resonating strongly with a particular tone, the next cells in your body start singing that same vibration, and pretty soon your body's open and receiving the support from Earth, and you literally feel safer because you have opened yourself to that support.
That is fascinating. And I'm so pleased you mentioned that because, as I said in the introduction, the fact that you can build that bridge between understanding some of these science and methodologies to traditional Christian practice is such an important aspect, because I can speak for myself that all my years in traditional Christianity, as soon as something sounded anywhere New Age-ish, you would kind of steer away from it. And then almost by accident, I stumbled more and more into alternative treatments to traditional medical. And that's when I discovered your book through a very good friend. And she does brain integration work, because we're both sort of neuroscience type nerds. And she told me about your book. So we speak about the energy fields. And I know that I've shared this with you, and I'll share this with the audience, that after reading Marcy's book, I did some research, and I do have certain playlists in my Amazon Music that are specific chakra resonance music and healing music. And every morning, I've got that playlist that I actually say to my brain and my body, this is for you. And I allow myself to go into those certain megahertz resonance of music, and even Dominican chants I found just very great. I use those for my exercise loops. But anyway, just reinforcing what you said, it's just so good. And Marcy, when we get out of balance, when we feel that sense of dis-ease, how do we rebalance our frequencies? I mean, how can we self-diagnose and know what's off, and how to get ourselves back on track?
Well, that's a great question. And the biggest piece, I would say, is learning to listen to your body's signals. So as I mentioned in the beginning, there are defense patterns that develop in the body. Breathing patterns is one. And if you can begin to start paying attention to your breathing patterns, am I shallow breathing, or am I deep, full abdomen breathing? That can be a good signal for you. And then begin paying attention to muscle tension patterns, because that will show you where you're holding yourself defended or tense. And begin bringing your breath, which sounds unusual, but it's a method you can use where you literally notice, say, the tension on your shoulders, and then you do a mind-body exercise where you bring your breath on exhale out through that tension as you're bringing in an affirmation, something as simple as, I join with my body in releasing tension. Literally giving yourselves permission to know they're safe enough to release that tension. And you'll start feeling the tension release. What that allows you to do is begin noticing consciously what's been causing you to feel tense. And there's a lot of things that can cause us to feel tension. Some of the top fears that cause anxiety and tension, and thereby end up lowering our resonant frequency, are things like fear of intimacy, fear of failure, fear of loneliness, fear of pain is a big one. It's interesting, in some of the work with fibromyalgia that I do, I have discovered that the fear of pain is just as strong as the pain itself in affecting the body, right? fear of rejection, fear of embarrassment. All of these thought patterns can lower our frequency and cause us to enter into these defensive patterns. So awareness is a big key. And then using intention to shift. And, initially it's like anything, it's like a sport. You begin paying attention to the fundamentals until they become habit. And there are a lot of neuro-linguistic tools you can use to kind of reinforce new neural pathways. But if you will spend just 10 minutes intentionally shifting, even if you just choose to shift to thoughts of gratitude, with intention. I am so grateful that I have eyes to see the colors around me. I am so grateful that I have a roof over my head, just whatever comes to you. 10 minutes is all it takes for the neurochemistry of the brain to begin shifting. And it's the neurochemistry that begins shifting how you feel. So you have the power to begin shifting how you feel within 10 minutes of intention. That's not very long. So
that's powerful. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's really, really good. And I know it works. As I said, I want to keep talking about great stories, but I want to keep the focus on you because you have such great content to share. So if somebody's listening and they feel that this is something of interest to them, tell us a little about the kind of patients that you treat, obviously without breaking confidentiality, but what sort of conditions have you treated? Can you help? Because some people may be right now thinking, okay, well, that's not going to work for me because. So give us a little bit of education of what conditions do you most effectively impact, and what sort of process can people expect if they contact you, and we'll make sure that people can contact you.
This is a method that is called an integrative method. So in my training and my belief, we are mind, body, and spirit, and they are all very much integrated. So that if one has come out of balance, it's going to affect the balance of the others. So I may have a person call me because they're dealing with headaches. For instance, I did have a client who struggled with severe migraines, and she had been offered migraine pharmaceuticals to alleviate the pain, but that didn't really align with her more holistic way of treating her body. So when she came in, her presenting complaint was, I have migraines. It didn't take more than 2 sessions for us to discover the emotion and the thought process that were contributing to the migraines. And in her case, she was sexually molested when she was 6, and she had repressed those memories. And she was a new mother. She had a 6-year-old who was going off to school, and she suddenly felt she couldn't protect this child. And she just kept telling herself those are irrational thoughts, but it was triggering the memories within her cells. So as we allowed enough safety for her cellular memory to be released, her migraines began lessening. And then there are what we call secondary anxieties that develop because of these repressed memories. So she was actually very afraid even to go out socially, and that would cause tension. Well, body tension can also cause pressure on the bone structure and the nerves, which can create migraines as well. And so as she learned to, with intention, bring her truths in, she was able to begin socializing again without having any ramifications. And the last that I heard, she had moved to another state and had not had a migraine in months. So
that's fantastic.
That's one example. Another, I do see a lot of anxiety clients. And as you can imagine, in this past year in particular, that's increased. And there are some support tools that we can offer to help calm the nervous system, retrain the nervous system to come back into a balanced state. When the nervous system is in high alert state for prolonged periods of time, it can wreak havoc on the body. So retraining the nervous system is a big piece of what I do. And I have a specific instrument that I've created that is very helpful that way, but there's also some tools that we teach clients. So anxiety is an issue. Sometimes I have clients that come in and say, I just feel stuck and I don't know why I'm stuck. I want to move forward in life, but I just don't seem to be able to get there. So those clients, we can find where in the body they're holding something, help name the experience, but more than that, go underneath the experience and name the belief systems that got developed because of the experience. Once we name the belief systems and we can recognize, that belief system's no longer really serving me and they can shift to their truth, then they can go out and move into whatever they're ready to move into.
So good. Marcy, thank you. I feel like we could talk for hours, and I know we've taken a lot of your time already, and I really appreciate everything that you've shared. I'd like to sort of move into wrapping up now. And as I said, I'll make sure that people know how to connect with you. I'm also very excited that you're going to be a speaker on the summit that we're hosting in May, called Think Health, about the mind-body connection. So my listeners want to look out for information on that. The marketing is releasing in a couple of weeks, but Marcy will be one of a powerful panel of people talking about issues of mind and body connection. Anything else that you'd like to share, though, that you wish I had asked you as we wrap up in these final minutes?
Honestly, Kim, I could talk about this for hours, and it is a multifaceted field. So there's any of a number of things that we could talk about. But the biggest thing that I want to leave with your audience is that we have a tendency to feel like there's nothing we can do. And that when we begin recognizing that if vibrations can pull us off balance, then we can also use vibrations to bring us back into balance. It just generates this whole sense of being powerful. And not only is it powerful to affect your own health physically and mentally, what vibrations we're holding within ourselves emanate out from us to the community around us. Research tools have recently shown that what I am thinking and feeling registers in the EEG and the EKG, or the heart and the brain, of a person standing 20 feet from me. And that's just what tools can measure. So I would imagine it's much further out than that. But that lets you realize how powerful we actually are, that as we shift and change our frequency, raise our frequency, we can actually help shift and change, raise the frequency of the world around us.
Powerful. We are just all these energy stores that can make a difference in the world. So, Marcy, thank you so much again for your time. And I feel as if I want to ask you more, but I'm going to leave it at that and say, I hope I've created a hunger in the listeners that they're going to pursue this on their own. So thanks again for making the time.
Thank you, and blessings to you.